Hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to a very special CMEpalooza Company Spotlight. My name is Scott Kober. I am the co-producer of CMEpalooza, and I would like to welcome you all to today's Company Spotlight, where we will be talking to three of the wise men from Educational Measures. So before we start, let me introduce who all we have here. From top to bottom, or from left to right, or however you're seeing this on your screen. We have Mark Crawford. Mark is the CEO of Educational Measures. To his right, we have Mark Garcia. Mark is the Senior Vice President of Client Services. And above him, in the upper right corner of Hollywood Squares, we have Tyler Nelson. Tyler is the Senior Product Manager at Educational Measures. So first of all, thank you guys all for coming, and thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So what we're going to be talking about here over the course of the next 30 minutes is how to address the challenges of the live virtual conference. Obviously, with the COVID-19 crisis, a lot of us have moved from live in-person meetings to live virtual meetings. And the guys here at Educational Measures have a lot of experience with that transition, and we're going to talk to them a little bit about what they've been going through and sort of some of their advice and insight into some of the issues we're all having. So let me throw the first question out here at Mark. So Mark, how has your core business changed in the last month, and what has the COVID-19 crisis in a general sense meant for Educational Measures?
Yeah, I'm sure it's changed a lot of people's businesses, and we've definitely had to adapt, and just kind of adapt to the market. But you look at that kind of the heart of what we do. We're a live meeting technology company, whether that's a face-to-face offering or a virtual offering, and so. Come early February, we started seeing some of our meetings getting canceled in China, and then all throughout Europe, and then kind of, ended up going domestic. And, for us, it just completely transformed our business. And, the good thing, like I said, is that, we did have a virtual offering. So really having to pivot, adapt into kind of, providing that offering to our clients, and really getting our heads around that we're a virtual company now. We really, no one really knows or has a crystal ball to tell when live meetings are going to come back, if it's going to be in, Q3 or Q4, at least live face-to-face meetings. And so, the company's had to adapt, which, has been great to kind of watch everyone, come together. So that's really neat to see that in your company culture. The hard thing is when you do adapt and there's something like this in the market, there's a lot of noise, let's say, a lot of opportunities. I mean, we've had conversations with school districts and government agencies and all these different, corporations about providing a virtual offering. And people are still trying to get their heads around what kind of virtual offerings are out there. And so, through this process, we had to kind of stay true to who we are, which is, with our kind of virtual platform being focused on the content and measuring outcomes and really the actual, presentation itself, and not like a Zoom, where there's a lot of different speakers and people engaging that way. And so, we've had to kind of learn that and kind of filter out the noise and stay true to who we are. So, the company is still doing well. We've, obviously, like I said, had to adapt. I think every company has to adapt right now, and just, really kind of stay true to who you are.
So then certainly there are CME providers of all types who, have been suddenly forced to scramble to sort of figure out how to make this transition from the live in-person meeting to the live online setting. So what are some of the important things for providers to sort of have on their checklist as they're trying to figure out how to make this move?
Yeah, so it's definitely we've had a number of conversations with a lot of our partners about this this transition. It's really tempting to think, well, let me just take exactly what we did in the live setting and just paste that into an online setting. But there's a lot of important factors to consider, and I think when you ask about the the most important pieces on their checklist, it's important to consider about in face-to-face kind of setting. There's a lot of opportunity to to deal with some logistics last minute or in a slide review setting where you're in person able to make those kinds of decisions. So probably the first item would really be about communication, because you cannot have enough communication when you're translating like your live events to your virtual scenario. That means coordination with your partners, your technology partners. It means coordination with your presenters, and just to really ensure that everyone's aligned on the same page. Connected to that is actually really being cognizant of the timing of your event. We've had a number of customers who are taking what used to be an in-person meeting where they brought in people from all around the globe to a single place for a meeting, and now they're looking to broadcast that instead virtually to everyone around the globe. And so suddenly time zones becomes an issue, and oftentimes those are things that you're not as thinking about as much when you're in an actual face-to-face type meeting. In fact, Mark Garcia, I thought you had shared a story specifically about an example of that recently.
Yeah, I've had a few clients inquire kind of about the time zone. It's not really an issue. It's a matter of, they're asking things like, what is the best time to broadcast? When do you think you get the most attendees and things like that? So I think there's ways around that. You can broadcast, one daily if you need to for all 3 time zones. Or you need to look at people that can do, rebroadcast for you, kind of replays as well. So if you want to do one on East Coast time, then do one a few hours later on West Coast time and things like that. So I think those options are out there and need to be looked at in depth, before you, choose what you're going to do on your virtual meeting.
Yeah, there's definitely some tips and tricks about, whether to break up your meeting into smaller meetings that you can broadcast to address specific time zones, or as Mark mentioned, just to be able to rebroadcast something if someone's not able to attend.
Definitely.
So guys, there are a variety of platforms that are available. Obviously, you hear a lot about Zoom these days, and there are other WebEx and other providers of virtual online platforms. So when an organization is trying to figure out what the best fit is going to be for the virtual platform for their live online events, what sorts of things should they have on their checklist? What is important for them to be thinking about?
So I think there's a few things on that aspect, Scott. First and foremost, there's a couple of different styles of, I think, broadcasts that people can do. There's a lot of informational broadcasts where people just need to listen in and hear what's going on and get the content. There's not a lot of engagement, not a lot of polling. You see a lot of those nowadays with COVID webinars. Just getting information out to a large number of people. And then you have your engagements, your data-driven, analytical-driven broadcasts that, probably in the CME side of things, you really need to collect, good data throughout these broadcasts, just like you would at a live meeting. That really shouldn't change. So when you look at things, when it comes to like features of the platforms, you need to make sure that you have the proper ones in place. So if you look at things like the Q&A functions, can you submit questions to the presenter or moderator? And how does it look on their side when they're receiving those questions? Is it live? Does it need to go through a moderator and things like that? Are there any social aspects to the platform that you can use to engage your attendees throughout the meetings as well? And I think most importantly, what I've been seeing, I've been on multiple broadcasts the last few days here, just learning about virtual meetings, more in-depth things I can learn myself as well. And one thing I noticed was on the polling side of things, there's active polling, I'm going to call passive polling. When you look at active polling, it's something that's kind of pushed out to the audience, where it kind of forces them to answer the question, where you're collecting that data, up front. I was on one a couple of days ago where, it was a video window. You can see the people online and everything, but the polling was below the video window. So the presenter had to go through every time a polling question was done. They had to say, go through to the bottom of the page. You can answer a question for us. That's what I call kind of passive polling. So look at features like that when you're selecting a platform to make sure you got the right one in place that fits your needs. So you're collecting the correct data on the back end for the outcomes purposes. And then I think also, more importantly, it's probably some of the technical aspects of the platform that you're choosing. So, One thing that's really different nowadays is the number of attendees that are expected to be on the broadcast. We've done virtual meetings for the past 5 or 6 years, and most of those have been add-ons to a live meeting. So we'll go to a live meeting and we'll stream that presenter to a remote audience. In those cases, it seems like we're probably getting 50 to 300 people on average, and it's kind of a standard what you get during those standard broadcasts from a live meeting. Nowadays, that's all changing. That's out the door, So when I ask people how many attendees you're expecting, it's really up in the air, and they don't know. So make sure when you look at a platform that you want one that can scale accordingly. So if that client says, I only got 100 people coming on, and that platform chooses to only set that for 100 people and then 300 jump on, you got to figure out how to dial that in immediately and scale for that opportunity. So otherwise, you're going to be stuck trying to, your attendees can't log on, they can't hear anything, they can't see the video, stuff like that. So I think that's a pretty important thing to look at when you're looking at the platforms. And also things like, if you're trying to take this from a live to a virtual, make sure you look at things like, videos. A lot of times in live meetings, you're playing a video on the main screen, whether it's a case discussion, maybe it's a patient vignette, something like that you can try to broadcast. So if you have concerns like that or needs like that, make sure that the platform you're looking at can play things like that. Like you can do it in a live meeting, you can do it on a simulcast as well. And I think probably the most important one, looking further ahead, after the broadcast is over, is really the enduring side of things. So probably 99% of my clients, at least on the CME side of things, they want to record the video and endure it to put online, for a year or so after the event ends. So in that case, there's a lot of different ways to record these broadcasts, and I think people are getting confused on how they do it. Is it a screen record of what we're seeing today? And can we just broadcast that back out? Or do you need to record the audio separately so you can sync it up on the back end along with the video and produce, many different broadcasts if you want to. Let's split it up in this segment. So I think that's a huge need out there, especially in the CD space, is really look and dig into that enduring in the recording options on the platform that you're looking at.
So then what are some of the common shortcomings you've seen of some of the live online platforms that are commonly available out there?
Yeah. Scott, I think you've got when you get into the virtual environment, online environment, you kind of got to level set expectations, right? So you're not in, there's a reason why a lot of, especially CME providers, are doing live meetings. You get more people that are engaged in the live setting. And so when you're moving that to a virtual setting, I even had an email notice pop up while Mark Garcia was talking. So I just got distracted for about 5 seconds. But ways to keep them engaged is really like Mark had mentioned. Put polling in there, ways that we do like you can look at like snap polls or any kind of polling, doing gaming, just bringing some of those elements from the face-to-face meetings into the virtual environment, just to kind of keep people, engaged with the content. So, those are just, some of the things you could do, and then, as you kind of evaluate all the different tools out there, because there's so many different virtual tools. And I think it was on an Alliance webinar yesterday where Brian McGowan was showing a lot of different options that were available, and you can get overrun by these. You got to say, okay, what is a priority for me for my session, and can that platform keep people engaged throughout? So there's things you got to look at. There's ways you can integrate polls, assessments, post-meeting assessments, and everything else to kind of keep people engaged. And I don't know, Mark and Tyler, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think those are good points, Mark. The engagement's huge, especially on a virtual platform. When you're at a live meeting, you can kind of view the audience and see if people are engaged and looking at the phones, looking at the screen of the content and things like that. On a virtual aspect, that's a lot harder to do. So I always tell my clients, measure everything if you can, whether you're doing polling, whether you're doing slide engagements or the Q&A session. Always measure everything if you can. And one thing to do is always look at the engagements, especially on these live broadcasts. You can have butts and seats at live meetings. You can see how many people attended a live webinar, but you really need to have a system in place that allows you to measure that engagement throughout the actual broadcast itself. So are people paying attention? What are they responding to? What are they looking at when they're an actual broadcast? So I think just the metrics of that, there's different ways to measure things, but just the overall metrics of how you're looking at your broadcasts are very important.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback on that, just beyond like just looking for opportunities to continually engage and measure that engagement, in a live meeting setting, oftentimes as a participant, it's much easier to have a voice, to be heard, because you're just right there face to face. And sometimes in a virtual environment, even if you have a voice, through whether that's through submitting questions or whatever, sometimes you feel alone. You may be in your home office or somewhere else where you're listening and you're posing questions, but it's hard to know whether your voice has been heard. And so looking for opportunities, whether that's leveraging the technology to again solicit continued opportunities for garnering questions, for asking their input and feedback through polls and surveys kind of throughout the course of the program. But also looking for maybe there's opportunities in our Array platform, we have a feature that allows you to respond directly to individual participants. So if there's a quick question, you can tap out a reply and that goes immediately to that participant. And that helps sort of reinforce and brings everyone together that, hey, we're here together, we hear you, here's your response, and just brings them into the meeting more.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that there are some providers out there who, are looking at this and saying, hey, we can do this on our own. We can kind of patch something together. We can use one of these either free or inexpensive online platforms and kind of throw our education out there using that. So what are some of the dangers of taking that approach as opposed to partnering with, an organization like Educational Measures who sort of has experience in this arena?
Yeah, there's definitely meetings where it's appropriate let's just cobble something together really quickly and get a message out. There may be a case for that. However, I know specifically in the CME realm as well as other meetings where the stakes are a bit higher. You're dealing with really important presenters and faculty. Your audience that you're bringing in, it's really important that they have a really positive experience, as well as that you are able to deliver the message and that they're educated. And at the end of the meeting, you're able to assess, did we move the needle or not with them? And so in order to feel confident, especially in a technology platform that you may not be used to or that environment, it's important to consider partnering with someone who has that experience. Number one, there's a lot of moving parts still in a virtual setting, right? So there's the devil's in the details, right? So there's the whole planning piece of it. There's a presenter training component. Again, we talk about our presenters as being key stakeholders. The faculty are really important to ensure that they are able to focus on the message that they're delivering instead of being distracted by the technology or the process. And so working with a partner to help walk through that experience is really important. Just one last point to call out is, when we think about, live meeting setting, there's, you rely on certain people who are experts to ensure that your meeting goes as smooth and flawless as possible. So whether that's relying on the AV guys at the back of the tech table to ensure that the audio and video is flawless. You rely on banquets to ensure that things are set and cleared at the right time, that breaks are ready when they need to be, so that you can focus on what's most important for you, whether that's ensuring that the presenters are attended to, ensuring that the participants are have a positive experience. So certainly it's important to consider a partner, especially if your meeting is important and you want to make sure that it's a flawless experience for all people involved.
All right, great. So we've got a couple of questions that have already come in, and certainly I'd encourage people to submit some more, and we'll get to them here in a minute. The information on how to submit a question here is at the bottom. But I did want to kind of briefly talk about educational measures online delivery platform, your Array platform, which I think a lot of CME providers are familiar with in the live setting, but maybe not as familiar with in the live virtual setting. So, so then what is unique about your platform, and how does it solve some of the key issues that providers are being faced with as they're transitioning from the live in person to the live virtual setting?
So,
Go
ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Tyler talked about this too. There's a lot of similarities between a face-to-face, live face-to-face, and a live virtual. And even though you're deploying the content virtually, there's still a need to have a certain level of outcomes measurement and data being collected just to measure the overall impact of the program. And so, when we kind of were looking at building out this virtual platform, we wanted to make sure that those elements were still in place, not only to collect the outcomes, but in order to do that, you have to engage people as best you can in that online environment. So we really carried over a lot of what we have found effective in the face-to-face to the kind of virtual environment where you're still engaging with the content. The content is the priority, and for us. And so, just like Tyler said, there might be other applications that might make sense for you given a certain kind of meeting or whatever you have or whatever your needs or requirements are. But when we look at kind of what we're doing, it's really the content is the most important, and then as a byproduct of the high levels of engagement, you're getting high levels of outcomes measurement. And so for us, being able to do that, and then as you can see, a lot of these virtual platforms also have the picture or the video on the left-hand side and the content maybe on the right-hand side. We have ours on the left-hand side because that's the priority for us, it's the content. So that's just one thing I wanted to add. I don't know, Mark or see if you wanted to add anything.
No, I think that's perfect, Mark. I think the thing we look at is a very easy transition for our clients. Going from a live meeting to a virtual meeting, it's a very seamless process. So everything that we can do with Array at a live meeting can be done on the virtual platform as well. Whether you want to play videos, polling questions, surveys, different types of button content and things like that. So it's a really, really easy transition, talking to clients about this and going from the live to the virtual setting. And something else we want to talk about is, the platform it's really flexible as far as, getting the type of polling questions and engagement that you want out of the platform. So really in the Array system, you can create any style of question you want, and we can create that in the platform to be pushed out as an intro survey. So if you're on a time crunch and you don't have time to go through 10 or 15 polling questions, our system can be set up to do those questions maybe as a quick survey or as a push survey at the end of the day. So just very flexible in the way we have it set up to run for the virtual aspect of things.
I'd say add one other thing. When if you're to add on top of what both Mark and Mark both shared, as far as the content, the flexible ways of engaging the audience to ensure that you're able to capture as much data as possible. And in order to make an impact on them. I think the last one other thing is knowledge retention. That's a big thing that's been part of our live experience, why people hire educational measures in the live face-to-face meeting, is our ability to leverage pre and post assessments, to do some assessment throughout, to evaluate how people engage specifically with the content in order to make really powerful decisions backed by data about future programming. And so I think, again, going back to the content piece, the engagement piece, that's really where our platform shines, both in the face-to-face meeting, but also in these virtual environments where it's critical to know whether you made an impact, whether you're impacting knowledge, whether people are learning something as a result of that. And so that's another key differentiator.
All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left here. We've got a bunch of questions, so I'm gonna try to run through as many of these as I can here in the last couple minutes. So this is first question is directly about Array, but I think it probably relates to a lot of online platforms. So what are the risks of letting participants communicate directly on Array? Do all of the participants see everyone's questions, and do you necessarily want that?
Yes, so I'll take that. So the design of our virtual platform, this is specific to our Array platform, but I might generalize this to all meetings when you do virtually, is to consider, especially with a larger audience, to consider how you capture that feedback and data. As we know that by just opening up the microphones, that's never a good experience, especially in a virtual environment where that can only introduce a bunch of challenges, technical challenges. And so in Array, we actually channel that through our Ask a Question feature, and which currently goes directly to moderators, or a moderator or a set of moderators, who can then vet those questions. I know in CME, as well as other high stakes meetings, that's really important to be able to capture those questions, to manage sort of the priority of those questions, to ensure that the message that you're then delivering back is consistent with your objectives and your goals.
Okay, we have one other question that they're actually looking for a price quote. So I'm going to tell the person who's looking for a price quote to go to the Educational Measures website, which is educationalmeasures.com. Is that right, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, and
Yep.
you can fill out a form on there, and someone will get back to you. So here's another question that came in. So what is the appropriate length of time for an online meeting, and can we make a multi-day meeting virtual? And is that something that you guys would recommend doing?
Yeah, I can take that one. I don't know if there is a time limit per se, especially in the current frame that we're in with the COVID crisis that everyone's going through, and everyone's kind of stuck at home and on these webinars. So we've done several where they've been the standard kind of hour to 2 hours, but we've done several 8-hour sessions as well. And throughout that day, they've been able to retain the attendees, probably within the 20 to 30% range of people coming and going throughout the actual day. So again, I think that goes back to your presenters, your moderator, the way you're doing your broadcast, the way you have it set up, and how you're engaging your attendees throughout the actual broadcast itself. And the multi-day is going to work the same. We've got a couple of multi-day ones coming up that we're going to be working on. I think it's a 2-day. I don't think we have anything over 2 days currently, but I think it can be done. And I think in today's world that we're in, I think people are listening in and need that right now. So I think it's a fine idea currently.
Scott, I think it's important that we do some stretch breaks, though, if there's going to be an 8-hour meeting. So.
Yes, we definitely have that built into our CMEpalooza spring agenda next week. So this is a good general question. So what trends are you seeing specific to medical meetings? In general, are live meetings mostly going virtual or postponing until they can do live? And are docs technically savvy enough to join virtually without an issue? So that's sort of 3 or 4 questions wrapped into one.
I'll answer the one about the going live or staying virtual. I'm seeing both right now. There's a lot of annual conferences that were canceled, and some of those satellites, those conferences, are going to the virtual space. But a lot were moved to the fall as well. Some were moved to end of summer, so we'll see if those get moved again. So I'd say right now it's 50-50 going from virtual, to live and moving the dates. And Tyler, I'll let you handle kind of the aspect of, the presenters.
Yeah, so it's key. I mean, this is one of those key things I think when selecting a platform is ensuring, number one, that you kind of ask about the presenter experience and kind of what to expect there, and then number two, to ensure that you have a partner that can support and walk through and engage the presenters, a partner who has experience in providing the appropriate training for them. What our experience has been is the fewer, I guess, links or moving parts, the better, right? That's for anyone, but specifically for presenters who are most focused on needing to deliver their content. and they just need to get access to the platform to be able to do that. And so, our experience so far has been actually really positive with a majority of our presenters, whether we're delivering an audio only type meeting or a video type meeting with the appropriate scaffolding or appropriate training to just ensure that, again, communication, back to the very beginning, communication is key with the appropriate training to ensure that they know what to expect. You walk them through a very simple step-by-step process. And then when that time comes for them to actually deliver the meeting, they're connected, they're in, and they're able to focus on their message rather than being distracted by the technology.
Okay, so we still have a few more questions. So I know that we're ready at 11:30, but we can run a couple minutes over just to address some of these questions. So in virtual meetings, do enhanced features like gamification, interactive graphics, and cases perform as well as they do in the live setting, or compared to other designs? What has been your experience with that as far as some of your clients kind of shifting the focus of their actual sessions themselves?
Yeah, I think those are very adequate, things to do during the live broadcast, Scott, as well. Like we said, we've been talking about, the goal of Array has always been to just take that live meeting experience and bring it to the virtual platform. So the gaming can still stay in place. And I think it's actually probably a little bit more effective at the virtual space, because you are keeping people engaged during that time frame then. And also on the back end for the CME companies, they're collecting more information, more data, and better outcomes for analytics purposes. So I think that's all plays into the virtual space very well, just like it would from a live meeting.
Yeah, on the gaming piece specifically, I think it's definitely important to consider that, we're not in kind of the live room. So I know some of our clients have had like the teams literally at the tables with lots of excitement generated in that capacity. So you do need to think about it slightly differently, that we're all scattered throughout the globe. However, some of the games that we have, such as our fastest responders, gives a question by question way to kind of win the question, and it generates some excitement and engagement among even a remote audience. So those definitely thinking slightly differently about gaming, but it's definitely still an effective way to kind of re-engage participants throughout the course of their program.
Okay, so I'll ask one final question here. So you talked about enduring even a live virtual meeting. So how long does it take to generally turn around the live virtual conference into an enduring piece that people are going to be able to access after the fact?
I think that depends, Scott, on what kind of final enduring piece people are looking for. We can record directly into other platforms if we need to. We can sync it up on the back end, the side-by-side video, one window player. So I would say a day or two is a easy turnaround time in most cases, just depending on the final length of the video that you're enduring, and the other aspects that come into play with that.
All right, great. Well, for anyone who wants more information about educational measures, the Array platform, or wants to get in touch with anyone from the educational measures team, you can certainly go to their website, which is the URL is right here, www.educationalmeasures.com. So with that, I would like to thank Mark, and Tyler for joining me today, and to remind everyone that next Wednesday, April 15th, we will be having our live virtual CMEpalooza spring meeting. Our agenda is here up on your screen. You can get all the information about our upcoming spring meeting on our website, which is CMEpalooza.com. So with that, thank you to the three of you. Thank you to everyone who's joined in today. And hopefully we will see everyone soon.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yes. Thank you.